Today we're going to be looking at our Vigo County 4-H horse and pony halter exhibits that are shown virtually. So today we have Hunter Duncan, who's going to be supplying our 4-Hers with some feedback on their horse and pony halter exhibits. So we'll start off here with mares, and here's our first one.
Okay, so just a little background with halter. Halter's judged and you're comparing to a breed ideal. So it's just looking for characteristics of horses that most closely match a breed ideal is the terminology for that. So one of the main things that we're going to look for is balance and structure. And then moving on from that, another important thing is muscle. And the final important things are breed and sex characteristics. So starting off with Peyton's horse here, some really good things about this horse. It looks like it has a pretty long neck and it's deep in its heart girth, which are positive traits about this horse. I would like to see a little more hind end from it. It is lacking a little bit, which throws off its balance a little bit. And then I'd like to put a little more muscle on it as well. That's all for that one. So Kenzie's horse here, some of the most notable features of it are that it's a very smooth blending horse and it's fairly balanced. So when you break it up into three portions, looking at its front end, which is kind of its neck area, its midsection, which is like the back and the barrel area of the horse, and then the hind end, it just means that it is pretty well proportioned and even through those three areas. Another positive trait about this horse, she's very stylish, and something I would like to change about her a little bit is that her neck ties in pretty low, which kind of can throw off the shoulder angle a little bit and make movements a little bit different from ideal. And then Andrew's mare here, some really positive traits. I think she is very well angulated in her shoulder and in her pasterns. They mimic each other. So things like that are characteristics that are going to make this horse and keep her sound over the years. And then another thing that's really good is her muscle tone. If you look at her forearms and gaskins, you can especially see it in that middle picture, where you're viewing the hind end, the gaskins just kind of pop out a little bit. So that's a good place to look for muscle in horses. One thing that I would like to change about this mare, she's a little bit long in her back. And so if you look at her, it kind of looks like she's lacking a little bit in the hind end as well. So those are just some things that throw off the balance of this mare. So Kaylin's mare here is a pretty well-balanced horse. If you look in, like I talked about earlier, if you look in those three sections, she's pretty even in those. Her neck ties in very high to her shoulder, which is, it helps her have a more angulated shoulder and makes her be able to have kind of some longer strides when she's moving. She also has a very refined and feminine look about her, which is, you can see that notably in her muzzle, or not muzzle, but her like nose area. It's more refined and just looks more feminine. Another thing about her, similar to Andrew's horse, is her muscle tone. You can see it from the front view on the picture on the right, where her forearms just kind of pop out a little bit. So that is indicative of a good muscle tone. And then something I would like to change about this mare, she runs a little downhill. So if you look, and it might just be the picture, but if you look, her croup where it starts is up a little bit higher than her withers. So that could lead to some choppier strides and movements. So just kind of leveling that out would be a good change for her. Okay, so Bailey's mare here. She stands on a very sturdy column of bone. You can see it pretty clearly in the picture on the right. She just looks like she has a very large bones, which are good because horses are big animals. Another thing that's nice about this mare, she has pretty prominent withers. You can kind of see that in the picture on the left, which the purpose of the withers is kind of to hold the saddle in place. So that's a good trait about her. Something I would like to change a little bit. It's kind of hard to see in the picture, but her top line does look a little bit weak perhaps. So just strengthening that up a little bit and adding some muscle can kind of strengthen their top line too. So Kayla's mare here, something I like about her, she has a pretty round croup and has a pretty big hind end. She's also very square about her hip, which you can kind of see that in the picture on the right, or square about her hind end. Just has a lot of power and mass that can come from there, which is where kind of a lot of movements within horses are derived from the hind end. Something I would like to change about her, which it might be the pictures, but she stands a little straight on her pasterns, which can lead to some injuries in the legs. So that is kind of something I would change. But other than that, very smooth blending, pretty stylish horse.
Okay, so that makes it through the mares. Now we'll move into the geldings.
Okay, so Kinsey's gelding here, he appears to be very balanced when breaking him up into those three portions. Just a very strong top line. You can see how it basically just doesn't like dip down after the withers. It's pretty level over the top, which is a good thing. Another thing about him is he's a very smooth blending horse from end to end. So he's just not choppy to look at, I guess. But that smooth blending just makes him look a little more stylish. Something I would change, if you kind of look at the picture on the right where I was talking about earlier with the gaskins being a good place to look for muscle, his gaskins just don't pop as much as I would like to see, especially for which, it's just like the breed type too. But especially for his breed, I would like to see him have a little more muscle on him to match or to like mimic and flow with the rest of his body. So Cassie's gelding here, he has a pretty strong top line. And his underline ties in pretty cleanly from his heart girth to his flank, pretty deep heart girth as well. Something I would like to change, he lacks a little bit in the hind end. And then similar to another horse we talked about earlier, his hind end looks like it's just up, or the point of the croup kind of looks like it's a little bit up above the withers. So he's kind of running a little bit downhill, so that's another thing I'd like to change. And his neck ties in a little low, but other than that, a very pretty clean through his throat latch, and just a pretty nice horse overall. Nice muscle tone, which you can see in the picture on the right. Just a pretty decent horse overall. And Kayla's horse here. So this horse is fairly well balanced. It's a little long in his back, but fairly well balanced. Muscle tone's pretty decent, pretty smooth blending, which I think we've seen as a common trend in the other entries she's had as well. Something I would like to change, his neck ties in a little low, which like I talked about earlier, that just kind of impacts the angle of the shoulder and kind of affects the stride of the horse when it's actually moving. But in all, pretty nice horse, similar to the last one, draws pretty clean underline, and is just a pretty decent horse to look at as well. I think that's all.
That's all of them there. So I'll pop back on here. So while we wrap up, we definitely want to thank Hunter for providing some feedback, something that you may not realize not going out to the horse show is the judge doesn't usually have a microphone during those horse shows, so a lot of times they don't hear that. So that's something new for maybe these exhibitors, and just kind of reminded me to always put in a plug for, we do have teams that you can join to learn more about horse judging or the study of horses in general. So you can learn about judging or all the body parts of the body and the different types of horses. So a lot of horse things to take advantage of, even if you're just getting started and maybe don't have a horse yet. So thank you to Hunter. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.